In whose name? Let the light come into the world, but not through me. A mesmerizing look into Neptune in Pisces plus Ye's long journey. Can influence create impact? Or can inspiration be the way? This past weekend, I went to the movies. It had been a while. I stopped going to the movies and watching Netflix, HBO, or the likes after 2020, realizing that movies and series were an incredible way to program the mind of the people. Instead, I used the extra time to learn new skills, new ways of thinking, and have become more productive in different ways. But I'm not condemning if you are hooked to your screen or you still go to the movies. You do you, and I'll do me. Anyway, it was a movie I wanted to watch for various reasons. It is a documentary, and I noticed it through the algorithm, where I got caught up with the story of this kid that, at 18 years old, embedded himself next to Kanye, or Ye West. For 6 years, he was just a trailing shadow during the time where Ye was most canceled, scandalous, while he was running for president, while he met Donald Trump. He was in this very erratic behavior. I think the filming stopped in 2024. Let's stop for a bit, and for those who don't know who Kanye West or Ye is, he's one of the most influential artists and producers of the 21st century, a visionary who reshaped music, fashion, and culture with equal force. His genius and controversy often coexist, making him a mirror of the times he inhabits. The filmmaker is Nico Ballesteros, and the film is titled In Whose Name, released last September in cinemas. This film speaks to me in many layers. It shows how culture shapes politics and how indoctrination operates as a political weapon. Culture reflects collective behavior, whether conscious or unconscious, revealing how our intentions or their absence shape the systems we live within. There's a striking scene where Candace Owens and a very young, silent Charlie Kirk listen to Kanye. It's almost a pity not to hear his voice, to know what he might have said then. Today, Owen stands as a disruptive figure in the cultural landscape. Around 2017, she joined Charlie Kirk at Turning Point USA as communication director, and together they became central voices in shaping a generation's political narrative. The 2010s through 2020s were marked by this kind of influence, where media personalities and online figures became the new architects of belief. Influencers became the voice of culture, programming collective perception as effectively as any institution before them. So in this scene, Candace tells Kanye directly, culture will always be upstream from politics. Whoever can control culture can control politics. You wearing a MAGA hat? It broke the internet. In Ye responds, I have to show an example of a non-perfect black celeb that still wins. Owens then calls such a position a glorified slave. That scene alone is worth a pause. Culture becoming politics, influencers shaping collective discourse, the blurring of lines between artistry, politics, and spectacle. The film is very Neptunian in a way, beautifully crafted, almost oniric. Nico Ballesteros, the director's gifted eye and craft, are very mature despite his age and experience. He endows the story with extremely powerful visuals. The way he merges into the environment with no boundaries is quite unique. I would love to see his chart and find the Neptune Pisces quality unfolding. He calls himself empathic. He doesn't want to judge or take sides. He just puts it out there in a way that you, the viewer, are going to experience it and then make a judgment or come out like me, connecting many dots. I don't have an answer. It left me in a contemplative state where I can look back and anchor the last 15 years in archetypal symbology to make sense and pivot my mind into a possibility to reach a synthesis that will light my way coming February 2026. Remember, I'm always looking for clues in numbers, codes, and harmonics. Ta-da! Part 1. In Whose Name? The Artist and the Fog. Through this spectacular experience, the soundtrack is gorgeous. We see the struggle of the psyche of an artist who has gone from the peak of his career to getting so close to the sun that he burned his wings and lost almost everything. The question that stays is, was he crazy? Did he have or has a mental health problem? Or was he a very smart man because he started a discourse that is still active right now, especially after the assassination of Charlie Kirk a few weeks ago. And with all the conspiracy theories going around, it is not very difficult to fall into that lane. There's a line he says in the film that he's here to destroy all the labels. Do you think he's talking about Adidas, The Gap, CAA, and Balenciaga? No. He's talking about how we define ourselves in society, with pronouns, with race, with all of this shit. Of course, there was controversy around the White Lives Matter shirts, October 2022, which is part of that wider context, a reflection on how expression, outrage, and symbolism collide in the cultural arena he constantly challenges. It is a very complex film because, as Nico Ballesteros states, he was focused on showing Ye's process. And as an artist myself, this can look and be experienced very chaotic. I'm not interested in either defending Ye's motives, nor his breakdown or his choice of words. There's a scene with one of the most important architects of all time, Jacques Herzog of Herzog and de Meuron. The scene is striking, and Yes treats the team very much like a child lost in his own creativity, desperate to be seen, but unable to see it. The process of an artist, seen from the outside, can seem a little bit all over the place, because Pisces carries no rules and at times no structure. Ballesteros found in Kanye a companion for his own creative process, and me watching it from the outside, I could appreciate that dynamic as a creator that cherishes processes as opportunities to evolve. There's another scene, really beautiful, where he made a whole film at the rodent crater of James Turrell. He has this genius of understanding material forms and how he wants things to be shaped and manifested, a very Taurus Venusian trait. For those who don't know James Turrell, he's one of my favorite artists. His art is only light, and your perception of it completes the work. He bought this crater years ago while flying his airplane. He spotted it, bought it, and has spent decades shaping it to a place where sublime experience with light can transform life into a spiritual encounter. I have experienced his work numerous times in New York, Long Island City, at the Villa Imbarese of Panza di Biumo, and in Los Angeles. He belongs to the generation of artists called light artists. He just works with light, perception, pure beauty. I was always looking forward to going to the crater. I think I will have to make that pilgrimage sooner rather than later. Turrell's devotion to light reminds me that illumination is revealed through patience. His work is an act of listening to light, of allowing perception itself to become form. In many ways, his life mirrors the spiritual task of our times, to sculpt awareness out of stillness, to let light teach us how to see. In his chart, Kanye has Mars, Venus, and Chiron together in Taurus in the 10th house. Beauty is central for him. It absorbs him. That cluster opposes Uranus in Scorpio on the cusp of the 4th and 5th houses, and squares Saturn in Leo in the 1st. It is a chart of brilliance and pain, of vision and fracture. From evolutionary view, this Taurus grouping in the 10th speaks to the vulnerability of not being seen or valued for one's true work, the wound of seeking recognition through public contribution. Uranus near the 5th adds a raw, unpredictable talent that resists containment, while Saturn in the 1st demands that he ground his individuality through the discipline and self-definition. His life has been the ongoing search for balance, those forces, to merge freedom and structure into one current of creation. The Sun and Moon square between the 12th and the 9th houses reveal the tension between his vast inner world and his longing to give it meaning. The Sun and Jupiter in the 12th expand his imagination and spiritual vision, while the Moon in Pisces in the 9th seeks transcendence through belief and inspiration. The mind wants expansion. The soul wants peace. Out of that friction comes both his conflict and his genius. His upcoming Chiron return can open a cycle of healing, helping him release that need to prove and create from affirmation instead of struggle. When that old wound of not being seen begins to turn into self-recognition, his creativity will no longer need to shout. It will speak with its own quiet strength. The loss of his mother after his 2002 car accident marked the deepest layer of that wound. In that crash appears to have opened him to inner archetypes and visions he had not expressed before. That experience, together with his later rejection of medication and his demand for freedom at any cost, has been both the source of his pain and the seed of his awakening. What stands out is his absolute commitment to freedom. Regardless of the consequences he faces, some even suggest that his apparent breakdown may have been a deliberate act of liberation from his contracts, a performance of madness that doubled as genius. It is here that the question of madness or vision arises, whether he is fragmented or truly able to tap into something more divine. Astrology allows me to observe without taking sides, without assuming a position. I'm not aligning myself with rhetoric or excusing behavior. What I see is a man in pain. That is what the documentary showed me, the humane part of him. I think it's fascinating to understand Neptune in Pisces, how the line between reality and projection blurs, how the media and the hypnotic suggestion via heavily medicated population shape collective perception. I'm speaking about a soul that has had the ability to dive deep into his own creativity, his genius, to put out things that are wonderful and unique. He has received validation from the crowd, built immense wealth, and shaped culture itself for a time. Yet, beneath that success, there remains the fragility of not feeling truly seen or valued by his peers. His connection to his truth still feels more important than all the billions of external acceptance, and perhaps that very vulnerability has been the drive behind his genius. Yes, story mirrors our collective Neptune in Pisces experience, when inspiration, delusion, fame, and faith all blend into one field of projection. On October 17th, Neptune goes back to Pisces for 90 days. We will feel the last bit of this illusion from the 2010s and early 2020s. 1 decade and a half, my friends. This has been a long road from schizophrenia to liberation, and it is up to each one of us to find our own genius, to have the courage to move through creativity in a way that speaks our individual truth. And perhaps this is what the film left me with. The truth itself is not absolute. It is the living presence of each individual perspective, which brings me to Here for the Truth. We are seeing the psychological cost of the influencer age, the confusion between visibility and value, between projection and presence. What once felt like connection became a hall of mirrors. Ta-da! Part 2. Here for the Truth. Neptune influencers and the end of the fog. Quote, for over 2,000 years, human life has seen us oriented towards goodness, beauty, and truth. During my lifetime, I have seen each repudiated and reviled, beauty dismissed as irrelevant, and truth reduced to rhetoric of power. Ian McGilchrist. He also reminds us that truth is an encounter, not absolute, not infinitely relative, it is relational. Let the light come into the world, but not through me. Neptune has been in Pisces for 14 years, dissolving boundaries of ego, reality, and collective psyche. Much of the confusion we see in humanity now carries this signature. It is as if we had had to go back into forgetting, dissolving, and eliminating what we once thought of as self so that we can restart from a different principle. This long cycle is coming to its end. A last passage through the fog before it moves on for good in February 2026. It has been 1.5 decades of forgetting and remembering, of losing and recovering vision. We're seeing the psychological cost of the influencer age, the confusion between visibility and value, between projection and presence. What was once a medium of connection became a mirage. Neptune correlates to how consciousness itself is experienced. Its shadow is blind faith and delusion when unconscious. Its gift is the dissolving of false thought forms, the reminder that all life is conscious. It holds a paradox. Neptune dissolves the self sense into the infinite field, creating both disorientation and the opening for spiritualization when integrated consciously. It carries the longing for fusion, imagination, and transcendence, but also the danger of confusion, sacrifice, or projection when that longing is not made conscious, the temptation of getting high for the sake of it. When I speak of the collective psyche's confusion over these years, I'm describing the dissolution of boundaries, the fog, and the invitation to reset our new principles. Neptune, Pisces, and the 12th house all rule the field of imagination and psychic receptivity, a field that can connect us to timeless truth or leave us vulnerable to hypnotic suggestion. It is the field of consciousness where boundaries are lost, where mesmerization and susceptibility to collective beliefs are strongest. The contrast with Saturn is clear. Saturn defines, Neptune absorbs. Saturn demands logic and form. Neptune invites empathy and surrender. If Uranus shocks the system awake, Neptune seduces and dissolves it into dreams. Quote, Edward Bernays once wrote, to convince large group of people, propagandists target their emotions and instinctive reactions. Trying to persuade someone through logic and reasoning is too slow. Emotional appeals trigger a fast automatic response. Emotional shortcuts replace the need for any effort to think. He also said, to sway the public, it is necessary to appeal to the unconscious mind, the emotions and the instincts of the people rather than their reason and logic. You know who he was. Bernays created public relationships and wrote a book that it was called Propaganda. What Bernays named as propaganda is exactly what the Neptunian fog amplifies: emotional contagion, spiritual confusion, the rise of false prophets, the workshop of celebrity, the influencer as oracle. During this cycle, technology became the new priesthood, social media the new church. The influencer age is already fading. We are at its funeral, and the illusion will become clearer past summer of 2026. Every Neptune in Pisces era has carried similar waves of mesmerization and revelation. In 1847 until 1862 came the rise of spiritualism, seance, and utopian communities. In 1521 until 1535, the Protestant Reformation split the church, birthing the new prophets and schisms. In 1356 until 1370, after the Black Death, apocalyptic cults and visions of redemption filled Europe. And even earlier, during the Crusades, the same idealism fused heaven and war. Each passage brought both vision and delusion, both the hunger for transcendence and the distortion of it. These are structural shifts in how the collective psyche remembers the divine. In our own time, the longing to reconnect with the higher self manifests in every form through ceremony, fasting, microdosing, ayahuasca, through addictions and obsessions, through the new digital cults of belonging. People seek transcendence in every possible mirror. I do my own, you do your own. The landscape is complex but full of possibility. For me, these are not end of times, they are beginning of others. In the meantime, I'll leave you with a question. Which parts of your life have been a dream and which ones have been a nightmare? Where do you think you stand right now? Are you already in the new times or are you still believing in the end of times? Where in the threshold do you find yourself? Grounded, lifted, or swayed by the current? The Sabian symbol for the full moon on October 6 or 7, depending where you are, at 15 degrees of Aries is an Indian weaving a ceremonial blanket. It speaks of sanctifying life through the weaving of polarities, the act of embodying cosmic consciousness in a fabric that holds both individuality and devotion. It illuminates the path of becoming a unique being of light, the creative fulfillment of our desire to differentiate and express ourselves entirely. To weave is to embody presence. Individuation is not separation from its own sake. It is the conscious integration of our singular light into the fabric of existence. Let's tap into this Aries full moon and contemplate what we are leaving behind. I am grateful for my life and for those who read my words each week. These times make sense for all of the trials and tribulations my soul has journeyed through with courage. I am alive and I'm optimist. Then I leave you with a video. It says the song is Runaway from 2010 album by My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, released October 4, 2010, exactly 15 years ago yesterday. Almost the entire span of Neptune in Pisces. A journey from delusion to vision, from loss to illumination. Ta-da! Last but not least, Greg Braden recently spoke with Joe Rogan, and their conversation is fascinating. He brought up the Gospel of Thomas, one of the earliest records of Jesus' sayings, a text that feels profoundly relevant to these times of confusion and revelation. Here's one translation that I like. Logion 3. If those who lead you say to you, "See, the kingdom is in the sky," then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, "It is in the sea," then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you are impoverished. This passage reminds me that truth is not given by an authority outside of ourselves. It is recognized through self knowledge, through inner illumination. That is the real kingdom. The awareness that what we seek has always been within and around us. Enjoy your full moon.